So this is the biggest mistake that I have ever made in business, and I want to share it with you guys today so that you can avoid making the same mistake as well.
At Foundr, our mission is to impact tens of millions of entrepreneurs every single week with our content. You're here because you want to know how to start, grow, and scale your business. We're here because we've found people who've done it before and we're bringing them straight to you. So make sure to subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment to get advice for every single stage of your journey.
I am Gretta Van Riel. I have 4 multi-million-dollar e-commerce brands. My first e-com brand was SkinnyMe Tea. I started that when I was 22 with $24 in the bank. So I was 22, which was in 2012. So at the time I was working full time and I'd started making these detox tea blends by hand. So one of my good friends, Ella, and I would always do all of these chemist detoxes. So basically, had a read of the ingredients lists of some of our favorites and noticed that like a lot of the recurring ingredients were herbal. So I started to make these detox teas by hand, and Ella and I had them, and then, you know, people at work started asking me like what I was drinking and, oh wow, okay, does that actually work? And then tried it out themselves and loved it. And then they told their friends who then tried it out and loved it. And it kind of got to this point where I was making tea for, you know, half of our office and a lot of their friends as well. And it was starting to cost a lot of money as well. I think this has a lot to do with why I had $24 in the bank when the company started. The other thing had to do with a handbag I'd bought. But basically I had been making the tea by hand and I needed to find a way to sell it because I found it really uncomfortable, like face to face, asking people for money, like from like their friends and family and whatever else. I was kind of like, oh yeah, here's my BSB account number, here you go. So I just thought, why not make a website for the brand? And I Googled, literally had no idea what I was doing. I Googled how to start an online store and Shopify came up, luckily. I went onto Shopify, signed up for an account. I think it was on like a Sunday or something. I had the whole day off and I ended up making the store myself. I think it took me like 6 hours or something, maybe like 6 to 8 hours to make the store. And basically then I made an Instagram account for the store. I just got an Instagram myself and I was finding it kind of, you know, quite simple to sort of like grow a bit of a following on there. It was very early days of the platform. This is back in 2012. This is before, you know, there was like big algorithm changes to the platform and it was really easy to grow on there. So created the Shopify store, created an Instagram, followed a bunch of my friends, then followed a bunch of their friends until we had quite a few followers back as well. Back then, like if someone randomly followed you, you were much more likely to sort of follow them back. And I remember I posted about SkinnyMe Tea and the brand launching, and we sold 4 packs of tea on our first night. And it was just really exciting. I woke up the next morning and had sold 4 packs of tea to people that I didn't know. So after we'd sold those 4 packs of tea on our first night, we started to grow quite quickly. And it got to this point where I was considering quitting my full-time job, and I was basically, I mean, part of my reasoning or justification was that I was making my weekly wage in like a day. So I was pretty keen to, you know, see how it would go. And I remember thinking to myself like, oh gosh, if I quit my job though, will I actually have enough to do each day? Like, you know, can I fill my day with this? Because I'd just gotten so used to like working 9 to 5, going home, working, you know, another few hours and then spending all of my weekends just like hand mixing and fulfilling orders, because I was still making the tea by hand in my kitchen at this point. I was going around to health food stores, to wholesale tea providers, and to Asian supermarkets, and I was buying up just like tea in bulk, mixing all of the orders on our kitchen table. My little sister said that it looked like I was dealing drugs because there was just herbs all over the kitchen table. And it was just, my house was just a constant mess as well. So I had to move, I was living at home with my mum and I had to move out of our house because my tea stuff was just everywhere. everywhere. Each night she'd be like, can you clear the kitchen table for dinner? Like, this is everywhere. And I'd be like, Mum, this is my workstation now. We'll be eating on the couch. So she wanted me out of there. So I moved out with a girlfriend who actually ended up working with me as well. And I moved, to this townhouse, and we started mixing the tea out of there. I actually ended up hiring people to help with that as well. And we had like 15 people, 20 people sometimes over at that house, like packing tea, like mixing giant batches. I remember we had like this really technical recipe list where it would be like, okay, 6 cups of like this, particular herb, now 4 cups of that, 3 cups of that, 1 cup of that, now stir it all together, and people would be like, is this literally the recipe? So basically by that point, we were growing really, really quickly. We were fulfilling something like 10,000 plus orders a month by this point out of my house. So we were running quite the tea operation actually, and basically started to think about other manufacturing options. So I looked into Australian manufacturers and, I couldn't really find any good solutions. And then I ended up actually going on a business trip to Hong Kong, and the business trip was actually meant to last like 10 days. We were looking at, incorporating a company structure over there. And I just fell in love with the city, and I ended up going back home, getting my stuff and moving to Hong Kong, and I ended up being there for over a year. So by this point, we were doing about $600,000 a month. We had really, really, really good margins as well, because we had really great markup on the tea itself, and obviously we were using free social media as our main form of marketing. So Instagram growth was basically free. And we were growing really, really fast through there. So we really didn't have many, if any, customer acquisition costs outside of like the basic like tools and software. So like whatever, $30 a month for Shopify and all of those things. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, make sure that you check out my free training by clicking the link below. We'll go through exactly how to start and scale an e-commerce store within 12 weeks. So we were in Hong Kong, and I started to look for a Chinese tea manufacturer. China is one of the biggest producers of tea in the world, so I was like, it'll be pretty straightforward, it's all gonna be fine. That was definitely the thought that started to lead me down the wrong path, and used Alibaba to have a look at some of the tea manufacturers. So I came across one manufacturer, and we placed a couple of sample orders, and the samples came back really well. We were really happy with the quality of the tea. It was really well blended. We were like, this is a great solution. So we ended up placing an initial order with this manufacturer, and we were, again, really happy with the initial order. It wasn't, a huge quantity. It was, I think that the initial order would have only done about like not even 1 month of our sales at that time. So it was quite a low order, but we were happy with the quality. And so because we were growing so quickly, basically we were always behind in our orders. Like because we were mixing by hand and doing all of that side, we were always like at least like 5 days behind, usually over a week behind in orders, which then would mean even more customer service. So I was doing that, even longer, because people would be like, where's my tea? And we'd be like, it's coming, when hand making it. And so basically I decided that we would place a really large order, and it would be for a year's worth of tea. I was like, okay, great. I won't have to think about this for a year. Imagine having that much tea. It's just going to be great. So at our current, rate of growth, this is around how much we need for a year. So we placed the order with the manufacturer, and that order was for $1.3 million worth of tea. And I was so relieved. I was like, okay, great. Like, it's going to be over a ton of tea. We can't possibly run out. Like, nothing can go wrong now. So finally, it got to the day where we received the tea, and we got the orders in. We opened up like the bottom part of the office, which was like a warehouse as well. And they brought all the tea in off the pallets straight into the room, like unpacked it. And we opened one of the pallets up, cut all the plastic off, opened up one of the boxes, and I had a look in, and probably the first thing that hit me was the smell. It smelt like garbage. I looked down at it and I could see metal bolts all throughout the box. The tea was kind of like the consistency of like compost or like mulch. It was like all stuck together and kind of like wet. It just smelt like garbage. So we opened up a couple more boxes and yeah, it was all like this. So basically had to throw out all of our $1.3 million, like 1 ton of tea that had come all the way from China, spent $80,000 on customs. Then I think it ended up costing about 10, maybe it was 14 rings a bell, but around $10,000 just to throw the tea out because we had to order a certain number of like garbage trucks to be able to then take it down to the tip and to throw out like a ton of waste. It's not just like the average consumer amount of waste. So you have to pay a tip to put a ton of waste into their facility. So then basically at that point, we were back to square one, manufacturing our own product in-house and trying to kind of recover from that monumental mistake. Obviously, I called up the manufacturer that day. Remember, the team actually recorded that conversation. My gosh, we will never be playing that. Too traumatic. I never want to hear that one again. I don't even know if I've still got it somewhere. But we did record it. Maybe we were thinking we should record it in case it was for legal action. And we called him up and he basically said, not my fault, I outsourced the product order. That was much too large a product order for me to fulfill in-house. So I actually outsourced that. And I was like, you didn't want to fill me in on that anytime in the last few months while we've been talking each day about how the order's going, you sending me photos of it being made in a facility, blah, 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 blah. And so it turned out that he'd outsourced the order. The person that he'd outsourced it to had outsourced it. The person that they had outsourced it because there basically just was not that much raw material of kind of like each of those herbs. Some of them are quite specialist within China. Some of the herbs even, like yerba mate, for example, comes from Argentina, so they've got to import that one in. There were quite a few different herbs that you had to import in from around the world. So basically, none of the factories were really able to fulfill the order, but none of them wanted to say that they weren't able to because obviously it was such a big, sort of payday. So basically the issue was that it got outsourced so many times that the end product was just obviously very subpar. Like, for example, we sent off some of the tea to get tested. We knew that it wasn't going to be fit for consumption. We'd already thrown it out by now. But we sent off some to get tested by our food quality and testing lab in Australia. I think it's called Food Labs Australia. And it came back and it was full of bacteria. It was full of E. coli, which is like a certain type of bacteria, quite sickening. Like, I wouldn't even let the team touch it without gloves on, for example, this product, because it just stank. So that is definitely the biggest mistake that I've ever made in business. I guess looking back now, in hindsight, now I've ordered millions more dollars of product over the years. We manufacture SkinnyMe Tea in Australia now. We worked on getting our TGA listing. So we're a listed therapeutic good within Australia. We're made in a TGA approved facility. But the things that I probably would have changed, the first one would be I would not have paid outside of the Alibaba platform. I paid that invoice separately, like from one international bank account to another international bank account. If you do order that through Alibaba, you'll get trade assurance. And if you weren't to receive your product or if you'd received it in that quality or that standard, you'd therefore be refunded the order automatically. So we didn't actually end up seeking legal action. I got legal advice. Thank God we didn't, because I'd probably still be tied up in court to this day, because it was like a Hong Kong company with an Australian subsidiary engaging like a Chinese manufacturer, but in Hong Kong with a Italian bank account. The manufacturer was actually like Italian born, weirdly enough, but living in China. So basically I didn't seek legal action. We just had to kind of cop that one on the head, which was, like a really difficult thing to, of course, have to go through. But I mean, we were lucky that we had really good margins. We were lucky that we had a lot of cash on hand. When I placed that order, we had $2 million in the bank. So yes, we lost $1 million, but it's not exactly, when I tell this story, there's often, a few comments back or a bit of backlash around how stupid would you have to be to place $1 million tea order, like blah, 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 like how ridiculous that would be your first order. I'm like, it wasn't our first order. It'd be the equivalent of someone with $100,000 in the bank losing $50,000. It wasn't, as horrendous as it sounded when it's all relative. But again, it was still like no one, you don't want to lose 50% of your cash on hand, and $1 million was like, it was a huge loss. It was pretty devastating, but I think I had been kind of like, just like resilience as a whole is a muscle, and I'd been training that muscle up with each small little loss over time until it got to that larger loss, and I knew what the coping strategy was. It was just trying to find solutions, moving past it, and just like trying to really just like forget about it until you've distanced yourself enough with time to, be able to deal with that again and really process it and think about it in a bit more detail when it's not as like close to home and emotional. So it was definitely a really, a big issue. But Alibaba Trade Assurance, the other thing that I would do is I would never order a year's worth of tea either. That was, 23-year-old Greta who hadn't, placed, hundreds of product orders since that time. I usually order around like 2 to 3 months of stock, depending on your lead time. If your lead time's around like 3 months, you might want to order like 4 or 5 months worth of stock potentially, because it will take 3 months to therefore get the order once you've placed it. But the main two things is I wouldn't place an order of that size, and I would use Alibaba's trade assurance to mitigate the risk of that happening again. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one and learnt a bit about what not to do, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey guys, hope you're loving our videos and that you're getting heaps of value from them. If you are, make sure to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe to join the Foundr fam. If you did enjoy this video and want to continue to master your skills, make sure you click here to access your free training now, where we'll go into way more depth with this founder.